Today on CityCast Philly. Last week, the water department released an inventory of all the lead pipes they found in the city. And last year, every city in the country was tasked with figuring out where lead pipes were located underground by October 2024. Philly made the deadline, but now these lead pipes have to be replaced within a decade. So we're revisiting a conversation I had back in May about what this project could look like for Philly and why the U.S. government wants us to replace these water lines. It's Thursday, October 24th. I'm Trinina Ree, and here's what Philly's talking about. Zane Irwin, former freelance journalist in Philly. Welcome to CityCast Philly.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. You recently wrote a piece for Grid Philly. And before we get into just how the city is taking on this infrastructure project, Zane, can you explain a little bit to us why it's important that cities possibly replace lead pipes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when lead exposure is there, lead in water accounts for 20% of the exposure. The rest does come from paint and dust from paint and things like that. There are health risks with lead. It can cause developmental delays and a lot of other issues, especially in kids. And we do have ways of treating lead in water. We have these food-grade chemicals called orthophosphates that will keep lead from leaching into the water, but it's not a perfect solution. And advocacy groups say it might even have environmental impacts to use this phosphorus-based chemical, which again is totally safe for people, but it's not the perfect solution, which would be just taking out all the lead pipes.
Would we still find lead in Philly's drinking water?
Yeah, there is still a risk of getting exposed to lead through drinking water in Philly. And that's the case across the country. There's no city that's totally eliminated this problem. So as recently as 2021, 11.3% of tested 3-year-olds in Philadelphia had blood levels above the CDC prevention and concern threshold. But the other thing it tells us, if we look at it over time, those lead levels have come way, way down. So the water department and advocacy groups have been doing great work. The lead levels are nowhere near what they used to be. But the bottom line is, yes, there is still a risk of becoming exposed to lead in Philadelphia. And unfortunately, that also is higher in poorer areas that have been faced with a lot of other kind of systemic public health problems.
Gotcha. Okay, so we are doing a good job with kind of lessening those levels over the years. But last December, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, announced a new idea to possibly replace all lead pipes across the country within 10 years. Then on October 8th, the Biden administration announced that this rule is now official. So all cities will need to replace these pipes, including Philly.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of the flagship part of this. Advocates have been pushing for this full replacement thing for a long time. Along with that, there's also going to be stricter measures on when systems have to kind of take action on lead in water. And there's going to be more regular inventory requirements. So it's not just going to be once every 10 years. It's going to be every year or every 3 years. Cities will have to update their inventories of lead pipes. But like you said, the big deal is that on a 10-year time span, the EPA is asking cities to completely replace these lead pipes.
Do we know how many pipes could be replaced in Philly?
Yeah, so out of about 9 million pipes that we estimate are across the nation, about 20 to 25,000 of those lead pipes are in Philadelphia.
So the water department released a public inventory of the city's lead pipes last week, making the deadline that the EPA had set for all cities to have this done by. So how did they go about collecting this data?
It's kind of like finding 20,000 needles in a haystack, which doesn't turn out to be much easier than finding one.
Right.
So there are about 500,000 pipes in Philly. Like I said, about 20 to 25,000 of those we estimate are lead pipes. And the records don't go back that far. It's in the late 19th century that across the US, we start installing these lead pipes en masse. And the records only go back to the 1990s when we started having federal regulations on lead pipes. So some of these pipes have been around for a century and they are still delivering water, and we don't quite know where they are. So the water department is already doing a citywide water meter replacement. So they're asking the contractors that are replacing the meters, hey, can you go ahead and check also the material of the pipe? And that's one strategy. We're also using AI-powered predictive modeling software to make some really educated guesses as to where they are. And they're going to update that inventory to be even more accurate in 2025.
More on this massive infrastructure project to protect the city's water supply from lead after the break. Okay, Zane, what have water management experts said about this project?
Well, environmental advocates, for one thing, are really psyched. I talked to some folks at Clean Water Action. They say they're pretty thrilled about these stronger measures. They've been fighting for this for decades, not just to treat the water, but to take those pipes out altogether. But I will say that water departments like the Philly Water Department, they pointed out that this is a massive undertaking. So the normal cycle for replacing water mains, which run underneath the street, and there are much fewer water mains than there are pipes, the normal cycle for replacing those is 30 years. So not only is the department being asked to replace 3 times as quickly, but it's even more elements that are under the ground that they're being asked to replace. And we already talked about how hard it is even just to find them. So the water department has issued comments back in February to the Environmental Protection Agency saying, hey, we already have a lot on our plate. The budget's pretty tight. We might want to slow down a little bit on this. Now, they issued those comments, but I did talk to officials at the water department, and they said that they are going to do everything they can to be in compliance with this. And they have strategies to roll out this replacement scheme. But it is a huge undertaking. And in an industry like water, which is struggling economically right now, they have some concerns.
With a project like this, what implications would that mean for the city's water supply? And then I'm also thinking, like, what does that mean for our streets? What does that mean for sidewalks if they actually started this project?
Yeah. So the water department said you can expect to start hearing from them. They have to excavate a certain number, I think it's 400 pipes under the regulations just to double, triple check what material they are. So they're going to be starting with that. The nice thing is they've already been replacing some of these lead service lines for free when they replace the water main in your street. So people have already been hearing from the water department about replacing those lead service lines. And when it's running as efficiently as it can, it takes less than a day. However, we can expect to see some construction around this. They cannot, nor will they, dig up half the whole city at once.
Right.
But there will be some more construction, and it is going to affect some streets and sidewalks as they roll this out.
Zane, we also have to talk about the money part, money needed for this project. Any ballpark figure being thrown out there?
Absolutely. If you take the back of the envelope math and add inflation, it could add up to $500 million. Wow. Because there are 20 to 25,000 lines. And even at a bulk rate of $12,000 to $13,000 per service line, and you add inflation, that adds up to $400 to $500 million over the span of 10 years.
Well, we'll definitely keep our eye on this and how it all pans out in the coming months. In the meantime, Zane, are there ways for Philadelphians to keep themselves safe from lead in their water?
Absolutely, yeah. So at water.phila.gov, that's Phila like PHILA, you can find a lot of information and resources about this. For one thing, you can get your water tested for free via the water department. And you can also check your own service line for lead, and there's more information at that website for that. Like I said, the city will also replace your service line free of charge if they're already changing out the water main on your street. And otherwise, they offer a zero-interest loan to have private contractors come and take care of it if you are wanting to do that route. Unless and until the pipe is fully replaced, though, there are ways that property owners that have lead service lines can kind of minimize their risk of exposure. One thing that's important to know is lead is more likely to leach into the water when it's been sitting in the pipe for 6 hours or more. So if you haven't been home in a while, overnight, it's a good idea to run cold water for at least 3 to 5 minutes before using it in the morning if you know that you've got a lead pipe that runs between the water main and your house. So everybody in Philly does not have to go running their taps for 5 minutes. I don't want it to sound like that. But it is a good idea to check what material your pipe is made of.
Great tips. That was Zane Irwin, former freelance journalist in Philly. Thank you so much for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Thank you. Had a great time.
Check out the Philadelphia Water Department's interactive map of service line materials in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Let us know what you think of this episode and tell a friend. Rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with an election news roundup. Bye.